Welcome to the Healing ME CFS podcast. Today, we're honored to have Nate tell his inspiring story. After more than a decade of living with ME CFS, where chronic fatigue and pain overwhelmed his life, where walking his tiny dog Junebug or just doing too many dishes could leave him crashed and exhausted for weeks, audio engineer Nate found Oxaloacetate CFS to be life-changing. From a career on life support, barely surviving, to a rapidly growing business, and from dreams of one day starting a family seeming impossible to realistic, Nate is thriving with Oxaloacetate CFS. Enjoy!
I just want to know a little bit more about your background, Nate, and thanks so much for being on as a user of Oxaloacetate CFS. What is your background in what industry are you in?
Sure. I'm an audio engineer, and my specialty is on recorded music. So I've focused the past about 13 years now, focused on recording, mixing, and mastering music. Mixing is where you take the recordings and you blend everything together and make it sound good. And mastering is taking that mix and making it release ready and commercially loud and all those things.
Oh, wow. So are you working with different artists then?
Yeah, everybody is pretty much independent, so I can't think if I've worked with anybody who's been like signed to a record label, but yeah, working with different artists, and most of my work I do remotely. Mixing and mastering, I can do that remotely. Recording, I kind of just do that for pet projects, like if it's a local friend and longtime client and it's something I want to work on, I'll do, but it's easier to do stuff remotely, both because of chronic illness, but also just my overhead is lower, so I can actually make a better, hourly and equivalent.
Oh, that's great. And speaking of your chronic illness, can you tell me a little bit about life with a chronic illness and kind of what it was like beforehand?
Sure. Right when I was kind of starting my audio career is when everything started happening, at least I think. Yeah, go figure. And I just had started working at a local studio in Wisconsin, and I was having, like, out of nowhere, just really intense pain and fatigue, and I had no explanation. I got so many tests done. I saw several doctors, and it's the typical, you like go to physical therapy, and I was happy to do all those things, and I was happy that I didn't have certain diagnoses, like, I was like, okay, great, I don't have MS, I don't have celiac, but like, what is the answer? So, living with that for such a long time and not knowing what's wrong, I didn't even consider chronic fatigue syndrome until a few years ago. And I
Mhm.
realized, like, oh, this actually sounds like what is wrong with me. Like, I just thought, maybe it was something structural, even though they couldn't find anything significant enough on my MRIs and everything. I just kind of had no idea. And day to day was a roller coaster. I'd have good days and bad days. But even my good days would probably be, if you didn't live this every day, you might consider those really bad days. And just not having a lot of stamina in terms of being able to accomplish things and work on things, or just having certain triggers before muscle spasms, pain, and fatigue set in. And, at worst, I was pretty, if I had a flare or like a PEM crash, it would potentially last, I don't know. I've probably had some in the past so many years that lasted like a week, where I felt pretty useless and pain and fatigue, and then like mood things come into play with that. If you don't feel good all the time, you're not going to feel healthy or well mentally or emotionally either. So, I started taking oxaloacetate CFS, like, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, a little over a year.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been taking it regularly for the past year and some change, and it was a total game changer. And I did not expect, I started with Benadine. I was like, okay, let's do the smaller investment and see if I notice any improvement. And I actually did.
Really? Wow.
Only from like 200 milligrams or something, I could tell. I think I was having a crash at the time, and I it took the edges off of it. I've become very sensitive to changes. Like there's certain things where it's like, oh, I can't, if I eat this, like I'll feel a little worse. It's just like everything is intertwined and really sensitive. So, ever since I've tried a lot of things, and I always kind of go into everything very optimistically. And so I didn't know what to think, but I also, trying different things, a lot of things just didn't really have that profound of an effect,
Mm.
or even noticeable. So I think in the back of my mind, I kind of expect nothing, but I was very, very, very pleasantly surprised that it absolutely helped with both fatigue, pain. It helps prevent the crashes, but also like helps me recover if I end up in one, because that that line that I can't cross is always moving.
Mhm.
And even if it was steady and static, I don't know how I would be able to measure where that is, and I would still maybe do something that pushed me over that line. It's just modern life and the expectations and the responsibilities like don't really accommodate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. And I know it's good and bad, but I think long COVID and long COVID fatigue has really pushed ME/CFS into the forefront of people's thoughts now. And so there's so much more research and so much more dialogue going on, for better or for worse. I mean, good for the research, but just sad that it took this long to be acknowledged in modern life, like you said. How does that work with your work too, with before oxaloacetate CFS and afterwards?
Yeah, I mean even to this day, I'm focusing more on the business aspects, and now that I have more energy and less pain and more ability to like get things accomplished, I'm able to finally grow my business, which is,
Awesome.
between the chronic illness obviously is probably the most major factor, but we also moved around quite a bit for my wife's work.
Oh,
And so we lived in Arizona for a few years, and then we lived in California for a few years. So moving around on top of that was not only exhausting, but like made it difficult for me to like build the clientele, establish
mhm.
roots. So basically up until more recently, it helps that I'm focusing on the right things. I've been in a business coaching program, and I'm focusing on marketing and client acquisition, which are, I went to school for this, and I even have like an additional degree beforehand. And like nobody taught me the things that I needed to succeed in my business. So, but now I also have like the energy and the ability to do so. So before oxaloacetate, I think it's safe to say that my business was like perpetually on life support. And I was just trying to get experience as much as I could to my, like, as much as I could handle, just physically and
Mhm.
everything and health wise. So I would take on projects from friends for not a significant amount of money, or like invent projects, like create something myself. But even that has been difficult. Like I have made music and played music for the longest time, but that was one of the biggest things that I kind of felt like I had to decide between
Mm.
making my own music and creating, and focusing on engineering and doing it for other people, because I thought that was the more viable option for generating money, because the music industry is wild. And
Well, that's
yeah, so it's only become more of a possibility recently. I just haven't had time, is another thing, just been very busy with my business. But now physically I don't feel like, oh, I can't play guitar. Like I'll feel it, or something. Like now I feel like I have that option. It's just a matter of like finding the time or making the time, which is a much more manageable task.
wow, that's amazing. That's so good to hear. We're so happy that it can help you. And you mentioned a wife too. What does she do that has you guys traveling around?
Yeah, she works in higher education. So
Oh, that's amazing.
for the longest time, she focused on writing centers.
Okay.
So she would,
Wow.
be the coordinator or the director of a writing center at a university.
Oh, that's so
And she
cool.
expanded it in this most recent position to be the learning center. So it kind of overseeing all tutoring and like support
Wow.
programs rather than just writing.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. Wow.
I mean, without that, it would have been immensely more difficult with her having more of a steady, reliable, because, there were years where I was not making much money at all because of my health. And also I just chose to be, or I didn't really choose. It's kind of what I'm passionate about and what I'm interested in, but like I chose to pursue a career that is it's similar because musicians and artists and bands kind of have it really hard. It's similar in for audio engineers, like there's not a lot of posted positions and stuff. So yeah, without her having a more reliable and smart career choice, I think we'd, even though it was made things difficult to have to move and everything, like it was definitely for the best.
Wow. Were you, if this is too personal, please don't answer, but were you guys together when you were diagnosed with ME/CFS?
Yeah, well, I actually wasn't diagnosed. This is the craziest thing,
Oh.
is like I wasn't diagnosed until this year
Oh my gosh.
because I finally found a doctor that was receptive. Like she isn't, admittedly doesn't know a lot about it, which,
Mm.
you'd be hard pressed actually to find doctors who will admit that, will admit that, like acknowledge that it is a thing or could be a thing. I brought it up to a prior primary care, and some of them kind of just push you more towards like, oh, this, like, the subtext is that it's a mental health issue or something, like you're just
Yeah.
depressed. And I even saw a pain specialist who I brought it up to when I was first exploring it a few years ago, and he said something like, yeah, it's more likely it's this, we just need to give you this injection or whatever. And I was like, yeah, okay. Like a steroid injection. It's like more likely that it's your cervical, like, stenosis, but like I didn't have stenosis when it first started. And I had MRIs 10 years apart. And each time they told me, like, this looks pretty normal, or like, there's nothing on here that justifies or explains the severity of your symptoms. So it's funny to have them say that, and then for this guy to also be like, yeah, it's probably just that. And then when I brought up chronic fatigue, it's, yeah, they, a lot of doctors and specialists just like don't know anything about it. But yeah, we were together when it first started, and she actually, this was like the hardest part about it, and probably could have potentially had some play in the stress of things, but we had just started dating, like, I don't know if it was a year prior. No, maybe a little bit more, over a year and a half. And she had to take a position in Michigan. We were living in Madison at the time. So before it happened, she had taken this position to get some experience directly in what she was trying to get a job for. And then right when I graduated from my recording program, it started happening. And I think it was probably, I had kind of a stressful roommate situation. I may have been exposed to some mold or something, like, so I might have had environmental stressors. Most importantly, I had mononucleosis. I had an Epstein-Barr infection like a couple years prior, maybe something around there. So that is probably the catalyst. And then the stress allowed it maybe to kind of resurge a bit. And then the emergency system went into action and never switched off. I have no idea. But yeah, I started having really intense physical pain, and it's pretty widespread, but I thought I could pinpoint it. And so it was really hard being long distance at that time. And it was, with the pain and the fatigue, it was just like hard for me to visit. I visited her like once, and then, there was a certain point where I think she finished the position, or she had a break, and she came and lived with me for a month, and that was like amazing. And then I mean, we discussed it the whole time, but she decided to go to DePaul in Chicago to get her master's. So then I moved back with my parents just because even affording rent was too difficult. I got, what's the term? It's not, I didn't get fired. I got let go from the
Laid
studio I
off.
was working at. Yeah, I got laid off because they were having financial issues.
Oh.
And to be quite frank, it wasn't a good situation for me. I wasn't getting a lot of like hands-on experience, and
Mm.
I had to reduce my hours from the start because of this issue, which was really, it was not meant to be. But because of that, I made the really difficult decision to move back in with my parents when I was like 20, early 20s. But at
Mm.
least I was a little closer to Molly. But, then we were long distance again. And I think through all of that, we've been together this whole time. And that really has been my biggest support system. And she's been there for me. And that whole time. I forgot the question. I kind of talked
Oh,
my way around
yeah,
it.
I think that's great. Yeah, she sounds lovely. How has it been taking oxaloacetate CFS and your relationship with her, and what have you guys been able to do together now?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't want to start with like a negative side of things, but she has a autoimmune disease that
Oh,
she
I'm sorry to
developed.
hear that.
So that comes into play. I'm only laughing just because like of course like but that's how things go. So we both have to manage each of those things. So maybe we don't do as many things as we'd like, but we're still, I mean, especially more recently, like for her birthday, I got her tickets to an improv show at Second City. And, the only thing I noticed is like the chairs were a little uncomfortable and it kind of radiates through my spine and stuff. And I think I would have been in so much worse shape and unable to enjoy myself if it weren't for oxaloacetate in that situation. But we'll go to comedy shows once in a while, or we'll go to a concert or something, and just being more present at home, being able to like take. I don't know if you can see, she's a little blurry because of my fake filter, but taking care of my little
Oh my
dog
God.
here, Junebug, like there were times where having to walk her would trigger PE. She's tiny and she doesn't like wearing the boots, and it gets snowy and cold here. So there were times where I'd have to carry her for a pretty extended period of time, and walking in the snow is difficult. So, like, that was a recipe for disaster. And something about, she's only like 10 pounds, but something about holding her in this motion, in this like form, was super triggering. I can't explain it. That and like doing dishes manually are both extremely triggering for my muscle spasms and my pain. So yeah, just being able to be more present, like at the end of the day, now I'm not in such immense pain that like I can't enjoy, or I can't enjoy watching TV, or I have to like go do my own thing.
Mhm.
So it's really nice when she gets home, we at least get like a solid hour and a half of catching up on each other's day, and then watch some TV, and I feel like I'm like able to be totally in the moment, and I don't have this constant thing like pain and fatigue monkey on my back like constantly reminding me of how terrible I feel. And just, yeah, it's great.
That's so good to hear. So glad you're feeling better. Oh, that's wonderful. And I just have one other question. If you could describe the impact of oxaloacetate CFS on your life in one sentence, what would it be?
I mean, it really does feel like it's making my dreams and goals possible again. Without oxaloacetate CFS, I feel like I would still be in the same spot. I wouldn't have the energy or the ability. I'd have to, sorry, this is way more than one sentence.
That's
I
okay.
I would just have to ration, what energy, the spoons that I have available, spoon theory kind of thing. And now I have way more spoons available at the very least, and at the best, I don't know if I have a limit, on really good days, because I've done some crazy things since starting to take it that I would never think were possible again. Not that you should always do this, but sometimes Molly will go to bed and I'll go back to work and I won't suffer for it, and that has made me feel like I can catch up. I lost all this time. I can still make this happen. One of the biggest things that I held on to this whole time, and there were times that it felt like I had to give it up. And I also looked into other careers and I just couldn't make it happen. But sticking with my dream of just working on music and continually trying to work on better music, working with better artists. My dream is to make just really good records with people. And now I feel like it's possible again. There were definitely times before that where I was like, this is a fool's endeavor. And now just possibility has opened back up that I can invest more time, energy into it. And it's paying dividends.
Wow. That's awesome, Nate. Thank you so much for that. And so glad to hear that and following your dream and your passion, and it's going. That's amazing.
Yeah, I will add too that, we're still on the fence about potentially starting a family, and, the financial things need to get figured out in the sense of my business getting to a sustainable point, which I'm on the way now, which is great. But I don't think that I would even feel like it's a possibility if it weren't for oxaloacetate. I don't think I don't know what it's like to raise a child, but I have friends who have newborns and toddlers, and yeah, it looks and sounds very intense and pushing yourself to the limit and depriving yourself of sleep, which is a big one because, my sleep has improved too. So I feel like it would be impossible if I didn't have that tool as well. Now it's at least maybe something we want to consider.
Wow, that's incredible. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy for you guys and happy for you and Molly. That's
Thank you.
really lovely.
Thank you to Nate for sharing his story, and thank you for listening to the ME/CFS Healing Podcast, hosted by Oxaloacetate CFS. For more information and free ME/CFS resources like guided meditations, symptom tracking journals, and clinical trial data, visit oxaloacetatecfs.com.